Dentists, doctors have read it. What healthy food is not that good for us. Story 1. My dietitian always says that most flavored yogurts have so much sugar that they really should be considered a dessert. But she also likes to say that unhealthy foods are fine in small amounts, and even healthy foods are unhealthy in large amounts. It's about moderation. Like 1 banana is good for you, 1,000 bananas is not. Answer: this is a huge point. Honestly, even calling individual food items healthy or unhealthy can be misleading at best. Diets are healthy or unhealthy, not individual items. Pretty much anything that is actively a known poison, at the doses you are taking, can be part of a healthy diet. It's not like unhealthy food generally does actively harmful stuff to you. It just provides excesses of stuff, or a lack of stuff you need, while leaving little room for getting that extra stuff from your other food without taking in too many calories. Don't think of food being harmful. Think of it like having a calorie budget you can spend where you need to get all your micro and macronutrient requirements in before you go over the budget. In addition, every nutrient can also go over the ideal range and become detrimental. Your goal is to balance things out as to not take in too much of any one thing while getting enough of everything else. Traditionally thought of as unhealthy foods usually just give you a ton of calories while not providing enough of the other stuff you need, and also possibly pushing a macronutrient budget so high that it's hard to get the rest of the stuff without continuing to push that same category into the bad area. But that isn't like inherently bad, it just makes things awkward. You absolutely can compensate for and balance out the rest of the diet to compensate and be perfectly healthy. It's just that individual items also tend to go along with trends in overall diet. So most people who eat, say, candy or deep-fried stuff, eat a lot of it, and without any consideration of the rest of the stuff they need. So they don't compensate by eating high micronutrient, low-calorie stuff to reach the ideal balance. I just dislike how unhealthy a lot of people's relationship is with how they eat in a fundamental way. Oftentimes, even healthy eaters will have heavily disordered ways of thinking about what they are eating. While not as harmful as a bad diet, it sure as hell isn't good for their overall well-being in being so obsessive and regimented, or just being a jerk to other people based on how they eat. Add in that everyone's dietary requirements varies depending on an extraordinary number of factors, and often you have people pushing themselves into a box they just don't fit in, or judging others for not fitting into the box that fits them. I guess ultimately the number one thing is flexibility, nuance, and realizing that one of greatest features is the ability to survive on very different diet profiles, good enough even when not ideal, that strict ideas about food almost never hold true in all circumstances. Story 2. The red wine is good for you thing was debunked a while back when they figured out it didn't really control for income, wealth disparity, and really, it turns out people who regularly drank red wine were healthier because they had the resources to be able to do so. We are coming to realize now that any level of adult beverage consumption at all, no matter the type, increases your risk for health conditions including cancer. Answer: surely there's a sweet spot somewhere where you indulge in stuff that in isolation is bad, but abstaining totally from anything that brings you joy is also bad. For example, if you get a beer or two at the pub every fortnight with your old college buddies and thus get a sense of community, is that really worse than being lonely and sad? Or, for me as a pregnant lady, will me accidentally eating 55 grams of licorice on a random day instead of the max recommended 50 be worse for the baby than the stress of obsessing over the amount of licorice I eat continuously throughout the pregnancy? I don't have the answer, but I feel like these considerations should be factored in the recommendations somehow, if they aren't already. Story 3. dentist here. Not about food, but sleep. Generally, sleep is good for you, and for the most part, getting more sleep corresponds to better health overall. Sleep is good for your body, but it's actually somewhat devastating to your teeth. That's why morning breath is a thing. It's also why dentists recommend brushing twice a day, once right before bed and once right after breakfast, and if it weren't for the fact that the first thing you do after waking up is eat, we'd say brush as soon as you wake up. But brushing, then immediately eating, is no good, so we countenance a brief delay. But basically, you want to sandwich your sleep with oral hygiene because, as far as dental health goes, sleep is bad for you. Story 4. Searched the comments and couldn't find this. Apologies if it's already been posted. Apple cider vinegar. I know not all would agree it has health benefits, but as a dentist, I absolutely dislike the stuff. The number of patients I've seen with sudden onset attrition, quite frankly, scares me. It's like one moment they have healthy, non-worn-out teeth. The next minute, a 30-year-old has the teeth of a 50-year-old. Stay away from apple cider vinegar, kids. Story 5. My dentist is always reminding me to be aware of drinking acidic beverages, since they can degrade the enamel on your teeth. Aside from the obvious like coffee and soda, this includes unsweetened sparkling water. Just about anything carbonated, really. Not that it's unhealthy, but you should always thoroughly rinse your mouth out with water after drinking one. Story 6. I'm a family medicine physician in training. Young guys, specifically, please chill out with smoking plant substance daily. For whatever reason, it's usually young men instead of women, but it seems to gut their motivation, and I see so many guys in their mid-40s that did it all day every day now with nothing to show for their life and not a sign of a career. Also, this isn't hard and fast, but often they've got bad anxiety and not great sleep quality. While you could argue it's not a medical statement about food, as family medicine we try to focus on the entire person, and these guys are setting themselves up for a train wreck. I really like that recent Kurzgast video about plant substance. It cites good sources and gives reasonable arguments. Answer. On the flip side of the rest of these comments, I'm someone who will absolutely convince myself that smoking daily is fine, despite it giving me a lot of anxiety for days afterwards. Vicious cycle. And it's not like you get unmotivated, it's just that you would be much more motivated without it in your life. The plant substance helps me get through difficult times, high stress, but God, every time I come out of it, I feel like such a more present and social person. I'd still argue that it's the least harmful vice you can have, though. And yes, there are exceptions to the rule, but I have a hard time believing there are more people truly taking it medicinally than people like myself convincing themselves they're taking it medicinally. Story 7. Grapefruit. It's a fruit so good, right? Not if you're on psych meds or anti-rejection meds or pretty much any kind of meds, because it affects the rate of med absorption and can cause unintentional overdose or reduce efficacy. Story 8. Anything with citric acid in it, like those hot lemon juice, cleanses. The citric acid chelates the calcium from your saliva and stops your enamel from absorbing it. I remember a patient moved to a property with a lemon orchard, and she became obsessed and put lemon juice on absolutely everything. When she came in for a checkup 2 years later, she had worn such deep abrasions into the surfaces of her teeth that it looked like the base of her teeth were missing on radiographs. There was so little mineral left that they became partially radiolucent. Only ever seen it to that extent twice over. The past 12 years, though. Story 9. My doctor every year keeps advising me to follow a Mediterranean diet, and a year or two ago there was a Rebastov linked comment that explained it much better than anyone. After reading it, I was like, I'm landlocked and 500 miles from nearest coast. To follow this diet, it'll basically be doubling my grocery bills and reducing my free time in half. If you live near a chain grocery store in most developed countries, you can do this without breaking the bank. Beans and legumes, switching to wholemeal bread pasta, canned or frozen veggies, are all affordable switches. And eating less meat saves most people money, unless your norm is to survive off the cheapest and most processed foodstuffs from the start. Yes, good quality olive oil is expensive, but your health is an investment, and medical bills likely cost more. Mediterranean diet doesn't mean eat the exact foods that those in Mediterranean countries do. Step in the right direction are achievable for most people, but maybe excuses are more so. Story 10. Tea. Tea, especially green tea, is a superfood, but the tea bags are riddled with microplastics. Buy reusable tea bags made from cloth. Brew your tea. On the other end of the spectrum, xylitol is actually great for your teeth. It's a sugar substitute that eliminates bacteria in the mouth. Story 11. Nutritionists and dietitians have way more experience here than general medical practitioners. It's possible to get an MD while learning only the very basics about evidence-based nutrition. If your doctor tells you something that sounds strange, get a second opinion. Story 12. Processed and/or smoked charred meats, especially packaged. Those turkey and ham slices are chock full of sodium, preservatives, BHT, BHA, etc. Nitrosamines in smoked cured meats, gastritis, peptic ulcers, gastric cancer, which is on the rise in young adults. If you like blackened foods or like char on the grill, just know there's carcinogens involved. Best is to slow cook, bake, pressure cook, sous vide. Enjoy every week or two, just not every day. Regretfully, a BBQ enthusiast. Story 13. In AD, but thought agave syrup low glycemic index meant it was a good substitute for sugar in my second, fourth cup of coffee throughout the day. Nope. It strains the liver and can make diabetes harder to have control. Ginger is great for soothing my stomach and inflammation. Everything in moderation, but 2 teaspoons a day isn't much, especially if having sushi and drinking cups of ginger tea the same day. Story 14. As a dentist, I remind people that the diet industry will come up with superfoods that are supposed really good for you, but in reality are marketing terms for a new fad over foods that you probably wouldn't enjoy eating, so they fill them with sugar. Story 15. Grapefruit juice inhibits CYP3A4, a common liver enzyme that breaks down many other medications. This could mean some medications you're taking can build up to toxic levels in your body. Genetic variation can lessen or worsen the effect. Story 16. Dental-wise, I caution my patients about eating too many nuts. The force that our food exerts on us is either exerted to our teeth or to the bone, more accurately to the periodontal ligament. Hard foods like almonds, ice cubes, stray popcorn kernels can wear down and even fracture teeth, force exerted on teeth, or create mobility, force exerted on ligament and/or jawbone. When the tooth becomes mobile, plaque and bacteria can get into the space where the ligament is housed, and bone loss and recession will happen as a result. It's really hard to keep these areas clean once plaque gets into these spaces, so prevention is key. So, for my avid nut eaters, I recommend getting sliced or crushed varieties so that they can still obtain the nutritional benefits without exposing their teeth to excessive biting forces. Story 17. While I appreciate a lot of the info here, I feel like people have twisted this logic to justify their soda habit because it has less sugar than apple juice, or their daily candy bar habit. because granola bars are basically just candy. How about you don't eat or drink either one very often? Story 18. It's not necessarily healthy, but a lot of people use it as a substitute for unhealthier drinks, soda, water, soda stream, etc. The carbonation bubbles is acidic and will melt the enamel outer layer of your teeth away. A lot of people switch to soda water, thinking it's a healthy alternative to soft drink, but it's not without its own damage, especially if you're drinking it often. Teeth go yellow, extremely sensitive, etc. Story 19. Most food drinks geared towards fitness recovery if you're not really exercising. It's just excess sugar to replenish your energy in 1 hour long endurance activities, like a marathon. Unsolicited, maybe, but just check the macronutrients of what you're consuming in a day. These kind of questions almost always have a "it depends" answer. Avoid too little protein, avoid too much sugar and fat, avoid excess calories. I'm 35, and I'm realizing how much better I feel now than in my teens and 20s during the day, because I don't subsist on Cheez-Its and Gatorade. I'm 180-ish lbs, aim for 3 meals a day. I avoid more than 25 grams of fat per meal. Avoid more than 15 grams of sugar per meal. Aim for 40 grams of protein per meal. And aim for 10 grams of fiber per meal. These are averages. I still eat bread, cereal, cheese daily. Just try using MyFitnessPal, Lose It, or whatever calorie macro tracking thing you want for a day. See what nutrients you're eating. I've been eating the same breakfast for a year. Cereal with less than 6 grams sugar and at least 5 grams of fiber. Add blueberries, hemp seeds, oat milk. Then a scoop of whey protein in water oat milk. 700-ish calories. About 13 of my day. 40 protein, 15 fat, 60 carb. Hemp seeds have lots of micronutrients. Story 20. I'd say there are plenty of commercial brands available that don't have a ton of added sugar. Some even use honey. Calorie dense isn't necessarily a bad thing either. Oats, nut butters, and seeds are healthy calories. I guess if you're trying to lose weight, calorie dense should be avoided. However, it's not unhealthy. Story 21. Diabetic here, my blood sugar is well controlled, so I can afford to use my body as a testing machine for different foods and snacks from time to time. Read the below from sugar content carbs perspective, as this is what impacts my blood sugar. I will pick on few items below that piss me off a bit. Oat milk. Contains a lot of sugar, if flavored even worse. Opt for cow milk if you have no intolerance and okay with the taste. Oat. Healthy, yes, but contains a lot of sugar from starch. Good snack, yes, but not really good if the plan is to lose weight. Not all carbs content will be absorbed, though. Given the high fiber intake, snack bars, cereals, granular cornflakes with healthy branding. Bullshit. Full of sugar. Go for raw nuts with some dry fruits is much better for you. Yogurt. Flavored yogurt is high in sugar. Go for plain and add berries. Berries are really good, low in sugar. Blueberries, raspberries, strawberries, pineapple. Happy to answer any questions about other foods as well. Story 22. People really have no clue how to read nutrition labels, and these comments are very telling, LOL. How could you not realize most commercially sold fruit juices, and just as bad as soda, just read the fudge labels, people, LOL. Story 23. Honey. From a chemical standpoint, honey is roughly 50 fructose and 50 glucose. People consider honey good and healthy, while high fructose corn syrup is bad. Well, HFCS is chemically composed of roughly 50 fructose and 50 glucose. Sure, honey has some trace minerals and a few other compounds in trace amounts, but teaspoon to teaspoon, HFCS and honey are the same product. Sugars. Story 24. This is a huge point. Honestly, even calling individual food items healthy or unhealthy can be misleading at best. Diets are healthy or unhealthy, not individual items. Pretty much anything that is actively a known poison at the doses you are taking can be part of a healthy diet. It's not like unhealthy food generally does actively harmful stuff to you. It just provides excesses of stuff or a lack of stuff you need while leaving little room for getting that extra stuff from your other food without taking in too many calories. Don't think of food being harmful. Think of it like having a calorie budget you can spend where you need to get all your micro and macronutrient requirements in before you go over the budget. In addition, every nutrient can also go over the ideal range and become detrimental. Your goal is to balance things out as to not take in too much of any one thing while getting enough of everything else. Traditionally thought of as unhealthy foods usually just give you a ton of calories while not providing enough of the other stuff you need, and also possibly pushing a macronutrient budget so high that it's hard to get the rest of the stuff without continuing to push that same category into the bad area. But that isn't, like, inherently bad. It just makes things awkward. You absolutely can compensate for and balance out the rest of the diet to compensate and be perfectly healthy. It's just that individual items also tend to go along with trends in overall diet. So most people who eat, say, candy or deep-fried stuff, eat a lot of it and without any consideration of the rest of the stuff they need, so they don't compensate by eating high micronutrient, low-calorie stuff to reach the ideal balance. I just dislike how unhealthy a lot of people's relationship is with how they eat in a fundamental way. Oftentimes, even healthy eaters will have heavily disordered ways of thinking about what they are eating. While not as harmful as a bad diet, it sure as hell isn't good for their overall well-being in being so obsessive and regimented, or just being a jerk to other people based on how they eat. Add in that everyone's dietary requirements varies depending on an extraordinary number of factors, and often you have people pushing themselves into a box they just don't fit in, or judging others for not fitting into the box that fits them. I guess ultimately the number one thing is flexibility, nuance, and realizing that one of greatest features is the ability to survive on very different diet profiles good enough even when not ideal, that strict ideas about food almost never hold true in all circumstances. Story 25. I'm guessing you're in the US. When I was in the US for a work trip a few months ago, I ordered the healthiest-looking option on the breakfast menu of the hotel, a strawberry yogurt with granola and fruit. Sounds very healthy. Got the bowl an A. It was incredibly big, B. The granola was laden with sugar and tastes very sweet, and C. The yogurt itself was incredibly sweet. You didn't taste yogurt. You tasted sugar with a chemical strawberry taste on top. Story 26. If I remember correctly, they also didn't take into account that some people don't drink because they have health issues already, but they were included in the zero drinks group. So the zero drinks group looked less healthy because they were already sick. Story 27. There are so many women of a certain age who fell for this, or at least use it to cover for their overdrinking. My mom is in stage 4 cirrhosis. To this day, she believes it is due to an autoimmune issue and not how much she drank. Story 28. I feel this way about so many just eat how they eat over in X fads. Sure, they've got better quality standards and ingredients, but I think that maybe it's not their diet that helps them live longer. It's being able to see a doctor without going bankrupt. Story 29. There was also a study that showed people who drank one alcoholic beverage a day lived longer than those who drank zero. However, they included people who had cirrhosis from drinking so much adult beverage and can no longer drink it as part of the zero-a-day group. Story 30. Surely there's a sweet spot somewhere where you indulge in stuff that in isolation is bad, but abstaining totally from anything that brings you joy is also bad. For example, if you get a beer or two at the pub every fortnight with your old college buddies and thus get a sense of community, is that really worse than being lonely and sad? Or, for me as a pregnant lady, will me accidentally eating 55 grams of licorice on a random day instead of the max recommended 50 be worse for the baby than the stress of obsessing over the amount of licorice I eat continuously throughout the pregnancy? I don't have the answer, but I feel like these considerations should be factored in the recommendations somehow, if they aren't already. Story 31. That's true, but we also have to remember that the sun is a Class 1 carcinogen too. Adult beverage, like the sun, still has many benefits, like fostering relationships and easing social interactions, the lack of which are some of the biggest risks for Alzheimer's and early passing. Beyond that, what these headlines often fail to mention is that low amounts of adult beverage use are still relatively low risk. 2 drinks a week only shorten your lifespan by about 2 weeks. 7 a week is only 2.5 months. Story 32. My dad wholeheartedly believed that for the better part of 10 years, he turned into a full-blown alcoholic that also denied it. He also mixed some pretty serious pills with thinking he knew better than doctors. He cold turkey stopped drink one day. No, it's no other medical issue. Story 33. My friend, who's a dentist student, told me you should leave the toothpaste in the mouth for half an hour without rinsing and no eating drinking. And then, after that, 30 mins you can eat and drink. Is that true? She also told me you should use the tongue scraper before brushing your teeth instead of after, which I usually do, and apparently some mouthwashes aren't good for you. Story 34. Follow-up question. I learned about what happens to saliva in your sleep years ago, and it stuck with me. Now I make a point to rinse my mouth out with water if I wake up overnight after getting up in the morning. Is this actually beneficial? Story 35. That depends on how you define healthy too, IMO. Like for me, granola and nuts are a godsend, because a lot of days I need to get the calories in, and granola is better than French fries, for example. But I can see how, if you're limiting your calories, thinking granola being healthy might be misleading. But it is filling. You'll say that especially with kefir or something. Story 36. I worked in the supplement industry for many years. I've seen some crazy shoot. Everything from false advertising, to a company putting literal sawdust into their capsules, to money laundering. I won't take a supplement unless a doctor instructs me to. Story 37. I don't necessarily agree. There can be mountains of medical evidence towards the benefits of a chemical or herb without FDA approval. FDA approval is nice because you can trust their knowledge without being able to read and evaluate medical papers, though. For example, chondroitin has recognized medical benefits, but is a long way from FDA approval for efficacy, although it does now have generally recognized as safe status. Full FDA approval is insanely expensive, and if something is not patentable, would likely never pay off. So we have all these potential cures that will never get anywhere. Because no one's willing to pay for the common good. I believe the FDA is working towards making the process easier in these cases, but I don't know the progress, and whatever progress there was is probably dead as of a few months ago.